before I tell my story, I just wanna say I know how dumb it is to do stuff like this. And honestly, after what happened a few months ago, I probably won't doing this again for a long time. Anyway, about half a year ago, I had the scariest experience of my life. For context, I'm a dumb teenage boy who sneaks out every now and then just to walk around at night. There is just something peaceful about walking after dark. But my parents never let me stay out past sunset. So for about a year now, whenever school gets hard or life just gets stressful, I sneak out and walk around for an hour or two. It clears my head. That night I'm talking about started like any other. I decided to go for another 2 a.m. ritual. I grabbed a sweatshirt, got on my shoes once I was outside, and hopped the fence to freedom. After I got far enough away from my neighborhood, I took one of my usual routes, cutting through another neighborhood, then walking onto a winding road that leads to a circle of shops and fast food restaurants. I was probably there for a good while, just walking in the loop, until I ended up sitting on a bench. At some point, I picked up a plastic spoon off the ground and started grinding it against the pavement out of boredom, until the spoon part was halfway gone. That would be important later. I was chilling there for a bit before deciding to walk around more, and eventually ended up at park about 10 minutes away from my neighborhood. That's usually where I end the night, just laying on a bench staring up at the sky. But the park itself creeps me out sometimes. At night, it's surrounded on all sides by a massive ring of trees, and it always feels like anyone could be watching you from the woods. And that's when shit started to get real. I was staring up into the stars feeling like some kind of philosopher, when I suddenly heard an old man whistle. I jumped up fast because I had never run into another person on these walks, and that's when I saw him, dimly lit by a streetlight at the only entrance to the park. I had seen him before. He is this tall, skinny white guy who walks around town all day. I honestly saw he was homeless, except he always wears the same clean fancy button-up shirt and cargo pants. Me and my mom have even talked about him. We figured he is probably mentally disabled and lives with a caretaker. I had had one interaction with him before. About a year ago, I was walking home in a broad daylight and passed him sitting on a bench. He looked at me and said, "Jesus loves you," with this weird little smirk on his face. I responded awkwardly with, "I know, even though I'm an atheist." Didn't think much of it. But back to the park. I just stared at him in that empty parking lot, probably way longer than I should have, because he was seriously creeping me the hell out. I think we stood there just staring at each other for what felt like forever. And then, slowly, he started walking toward me. I was frozen in fear. Like, why the f is this old white geezer out here with me at 3 a.m. in an empty ass park? I stood up as he got closer, and when he did, he just gave me this cheeky grin, like he knew something I didn't. I just keep gawking at him like a fucking buffoon. You ever scoff at a movie when the main character freezes in fear? Yeah, I have done that. And I will never do it again, because in that moment, I was more frozen than I have ever been in my life. After maybe 10 seconds of awkward silence, he kind of half-patted, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a plastic spoon. The same plastic spoon I was holding about an hour earlier at the shopping plaza. He tucked it into the front pocket of my sweatshirt, and I guess that snapped me out of it. I absolutely fucking booked it to the public bathroom and locked the door. Now I'm standing in this dimly lit bathroom, alone in the middle of the night, probably past 3 a.m. by now. I figured he might leave after seeing how panicked I was, but honestly, I don't think he ever did. I looked closer at the plastic spoon, and it was changed. Have you seen that one viral AI generated image that look normal at first glance, but you can't actually identify anything in it? If not, search, name one thing in this image. Now imagine that, the word carved into a plastic spoon. You can't read it. You can't even identify any of the letters. I sat there in that locked bathroom for over half an hour, contemplating every single decision I have made over the past years that led me to this nightmare. To be clear, I had no phone. My parents had installed Live 360 on it, so they could track my location. I also didn't have a watch or any way to know the time or contact anyone. Eventually, I worked up the courage to unlock the door, and I absolutely rocked myself towards the park's exit. But just before I turned the corner, I looked back for a second and saw a figure sitting on the bench right next to the bathroom. That old man had waited outside for an hour just to see me one more time. I'm being completely honest when I say I held a full sprint all the way back to my neighborhood. I caught my breeze behind a bush, then snuck back into the house. I haven't gone out at night since that experience, and honestly, I don't know if I ever will. I still have the spoon, buried somewhere in my wardrobe. I haven't looked at it in months. Sometimes I think about how long he was following me, or if he'd been stalking me on another late night walks too. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, unless you are here to lecture me about sneaking out, because trust me, I have already learned the lesson. It was about 13 at the time, so this must have been around 2009. My parents were out that night, probably at some work party, since there was alcohol involved. They took a taxi and left the car at home. I usually loved being home alone. Mom would leave beat the money and I stay up all night gaming on my Xbox. It was Halloween break. No school, no responsibilities, just me, the couch, and some good old-fashioned zombie games. At the time, I was deep into Left 4 Dead and Call of Duty Zombies. Man, pizza, snacks, a case of Dr. Pepper, and gaming with the boys. That was heaven. But something happened one night that messed me up for a life. To this day, I double check every lock. I never wear both sides of my headphones, and I can't stand the dark. That night ruined a few things for me, including a few relationships. I was playing Xbox like usual. That night I was alone, no party chat, no teammates, just me. And the witch from Left 4 Dead who was crying used to seriously creep me out. I was already on edge, and every sound in the house made me flinch. My window was cracked open just a bit, and I heard footsteps. Someone walking up our gravel driveway. I paused the game. I thought it might be my parents, but when I looked outside, there was no one. I sat still for a while, game paused, listening, nothing. Then maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, I heard the crash from the backyard. Our trash cans had fallen over. I jumped. We didn't get raccoons or anything like that. And it wasn't windy, just a bit of light rain. I looked out the hallway window towards the yard. The bins were knocked over, but I couldn't see anyone. I couldn't see the back door either. The porch roof blocked the view, but something was definitely wrong. I stood at the top of the stairs, frozen, staring into the pitch black below, praying I wouldn't hear anything else. For a while, All I could hear was the rain tapping on windows and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then, the door handle. I heard someone jiggling the back door handle. Slowly, I crept down the stairs. I peeked around the corner into the kitchen, and my heartbeat nearly stopped. The back door was wide open. Cold air was drafting in. The room was dark, and the silence was sick. I stood there in shock. My body wouldn't move. My brain screamed, "Call the police." But the phone was mounted on the wall, right next to the fridge, inside the kitchen. Every instinct told me not to go in, but I did. I started walking towards the kitchen, every step slower than the last. It felt like the hallway stretched forever. My legs were jelly, my breath was shallow. I kept expecting a hand reach out from the dark and grab me. I finally reached the phone. I lifted it with trembling hands and yelled, 911. That's when I heard it. "Aren't you supposed to be in bed, son?" The voice came from the corner of the kitchen near the window. Low, gravelly, calm. I froze. I couldn't breathe. Then I dropped the phone and ran. Behind me, I heard a loud thud, like a boot hitting the floor. Then fast, heavy footsteps. He was chasing me. I could hear him breathing hard behind me. Feet pounding the floor, getting closer. My socks were sleeping on the wood, and I nearly fell as I turned toward the front door. My fingers scrambled for the handle, and before I could even pull it open, it swung wide. It was my parents. I ran into my dad, sobbing, trying to say something, anything. Through the panic, I gasped, "Someone in the kitchen!" My dad pushed past me instantly, and as I turned back, I saw the man running through the open back door into the night. My dad chased me. He came back minutes later and told my mom to call the cops. They asked me what happened, but I couldn't describe the man. It was too dark. They asked my dad where he went, but all he could say was the guy jumped the fence and disappeared into the woods. They never found him. I have moved out since then. I live on my own now. Every window and door has top-grade locks. But for years after that, every time I looked out at those trees behind the house, I felt like someone was looking. I was on a night shift with two of my co-workers. Both of them new to this line of work. One of our residents, an elderly lady, was nearing the end. We all knew this could be her final night. It was my responsibility to sit with her for the entire shift, so I stayed in her room, right beside her bed. The atmosphere was unnervingly quiet. She lay there, barely breathing, eyes half open, like she was caught somewhere between two worlds. As I sat there, watching her, I could feel it. The moment was coming, and then it happened. I watched, with my own eyes, as her soul slipped away. It didn't look like anything you would see in a movie. It was like a faint mist rising from her chest, barely visible, but unmistakably real. And then, silence. She was gone. My coworkers stood just outside the door, frozen. They didn't want to come in, terrified of what they might see. They had never witnessed this before, but I had. I'd seen it more times than I'd like to admit. I checked her pulse. Nothing. Then I called the doctor to certify the death. The three of us stood there for a while in silence. I was beside her body. My coworkers still clinging to the doorway like something was going to jump out at them. And that's when it happened. Her cold buzzer started going off. Not in the bedroom, in the lounge. I looked at the time, 2 a.m. All the residents were asleep. The lights in the lounge were off. Nobody had been in there since earlier that evening. But her buzzer, the one linked to the chair she always sat in, was flashing red, beeping loud, calling someone. My coworkers panicked. One of them nearly screamed. They didn't know how to process it. To them, this was something out of a horror film. I stayed calm. I'd seen things like this before. I told them she's just visiting the last place she loved. She's saying goodbye. They didn't move from the doorway, but I walked toward the lounge alone. No fear, just respect. When I reached the chair, the peeping stopped. No light, no sound. She was gone. I have seen things like this more than once. In care homes, nursing facilities, this doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes the soul needs one last moment, one last goodbye.